Hey there, laser makers. Jim, the Michigan Laser Guy here. Today we're doing another video in our beginner series. This is a series of tutorials aimed at people that are new to LightBurn, learning how to work in LightBurn for the first time, um, and just kind of want to know, like, how do I get started? Like, I've got my laser set up. Um, I'm, I'm you know, it's connected to LightBurn. It's doing a thing, but you need a little help working in LightBurn. So this is aimed at, again, beginners, someone that's fresh into LightBurn, learning how to use the software. I've done another video that was kind of a description of the layout of LightBurn. If you're unfamiliar with kind of where things are on the screen, you can either kind of work with work your way and kind of learn it by trial and error, or you can watch that video that will kind of help you learn the layout of Lightburn, um, or one of many other creators' videos to learn the layout of Lightburn and where things are located. Um, for this video, I am using Lightburn 2.0. This is a release candidate software as of the time of recording. Um, I have this in dark mode to help indicate that this is in fact a release candidate video, or that it is, a release candidate software, or that it is version 2. Um, dark mode is a feature that is in Lightburn 2. So, without any further delays, today's video we're going to talk about selecting objects, different ways of selecting objects and manipulating your selections on the screen. We're going to talk about moving objects around, and grouping and ungrouping objects. So I'm going to be using some of these selection tools, some of these creation tools. I will cover those further in another beginner tutorial, but for the most part, I will try to explain kind of what I'm doing when I do those, although it is not really relevant to the purpose of this video. So to get started, I'm just going to create some objects here um, using some of the creation tools. And we're going to move some stuff around here and just get some overlapping stuff on the screen. Right now I'm just using rectangles, but it could be any shapes. Now the important tool that you're going to find you're using quite frequently is this arrow tool. This is your selection tool. You can get back to this tool at any time by using the escape key. So no matter what tool you're in, if you hit the escape key, it's going to take you back to the selection tool. Again, this is the tool you're going to use the most frequently. Anytime you have objects on the screen, if you want to work with those objects, manipulate them, align them, etc., it's important to know how to select stuff and how to select the appropriate things that you're trying to get to. Some of these tools require, a single object to be selected. Some of them require multiple objects to be selected. Some of them require precisely 2 objects to be selected. So it's important to know kind of how to select and how to tell what is selected. This comes into play a lot if say you buy a file from Etsy and you import it. A lot of times those files are going to come with groupings already in place, and or objects that are connected to each other, and it's important to know how to identify whether they're grouped and all that stuff. So let's get to talking about selecting objects. Now, first and foremost, if you're on the select tool, again, escape will select that tool. If you're on any other tool, you can simply click on those objects, right? So you click on an object, and it will select that object. Now you can always see, if you can see my icon, it is changing to several different icons, several different cursors, and those mean some different things. So let's move an object here, just so you can see kind of what some of those things are. The first one is this line, and it looks like kind of a line with a kind of a little squiggle in the middle of it. This is just telling you that your mouse is hovered over a line, or that You may not be directly over the line, but when snapping is turned on, that indicates that the software has identified that you are over this line. So if you click, once that icon changes from a pointer to a line, you can then click and it will select that object, or it's telling you that you're snapped to that line. The next icon that you may get is a line with a circle on it. This means you're at the midpoint of this line, or the snapping has selected the midpoint. This is important, like if you were drawing, like say, a pencil, drawing an additional line. So anytime you connect things to the midpoint, having that icon is always going to be, as long as you have that line with a circle, that line is going to be attached to the midpoint of this. No matter, you don't have to be that precise, right? So anytime you're in here, you can get the midpoint of that line. The next icon you might get is this icon that is a circle with a kind of a X through it. This means you're at the midpoint of the object, or at the center of the object. So when you're selecting things, this is not as useful, but if you have an object selected, if you're adding to it, or you're creating using other creation tools, sometimes having those icons is helpful. Like say you wanted to create something at the center of this rectangle, you can do so, by using those icons to snap, instead of having to then go back and align those things later. Now, another important thing about selecting is there's a couple different selection modes. The first one is called an enclosing select, and that's when you drag from left to right, and this is indicated by a red box. What this means is that when you drag across items, it is only going to select items that you have entirely enclosed in the box, right? So you can drag partially across other items, but only the ones that are entirely enclosed in your selection area are going to get selected. The next selection criteria is when you drag from right to left. When you drag from right to left, your selection box is going to be green. And what this is a crossing select box. So anything that your selection box touches is going to be selected. So when you drag from right to left, again, it's a crossing selection box, and it will select anything that the box touches. If you drag from left to right, your selection will be only the stuff that is contained entirely within the box. In addition to that, you can select items individually. You can click on one, click on another. If you hold Control when you click on them, it will add to the selection or remove from the selection. So if you want to select this box and this box and this box, then you change your mind about the second one, while holding Control, you can click on that and it'll unselect those items. Likewise, you can use Shift to do the same thing. However, Shift only adds to your selection. So if you have Shift, you can click one, additional items. However, you can't click them again to get rid of them. So if you want to do that, you can then switch to Control. So you can do this any combination of those. So you could select a whole bunch of items and then use Control and click on, a specific one to get rid of it, and so on and so forth. Now, an important thing about objects, what we'll do is we'll get into next, we'll get into grouping and ungrouping objects, because this is kind of like the meat and potatoes of how to work with your designs and stuff. You're going to spend a lot of time grouping things because you want things to move together, or maybe you want to align stuff together, and it's like grouping them is how you get them to move together without having to spend a lot of time individually aligning every single item in your design. So first and foremost, you can identify grouped and ungrouped objects by their selection outlines. And it may be hard to see in this video, but right now I have a handful of ungrouped items in my selection, and those are all identified by a dashed line, and it's kind of tracing around each object. A dashed line indicates that it is an individual object, not part of a group. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take two objects. Oops. I'm going to take two objects. I'm going to group those. You can do that with a couple different ways. You can use a keyboard shortcut, which is Control G, to group those. Likewise, to ungroup them, Control U will ungroup. So Control G groups, Control U ungroups. You can also use in the toolbar at the top, you can use this button that has three little people on it. This is telling you it's going to make a group. And likewise, if you have a group selected, it will gray out because it's already grouped. And then you can use the ungroup tool to ungroup that. Now, when you group selections, so when you group an item, now if you select either one or either part of it, the entire group will be selected. Likewise, if you move things, if you move things around, it's always going to move as a group. And if you want to group, and there is no requirement that a group contains only a certain number of items. It can also contain other groups. So for example, let's ungroup this. We're going to select just this one, make it smaller, put it inside this other one. Let's say I have this object here that I have a border or something, right? So I want to group the border, and now I'm going to do other stuff. Maybe I'm going to create a star. Let's just create a star here. So now I want to do some something related to this star. I want to attach like this frame around the star. And now once I've had those layouts changed, or those things manipulated where I want them, let's say I want to take this whole thing and group this now. So, so I take this whole thing, I group it. So now what I've done is I've grouped both the star and the frame, but if I ungroup them just once, what will happen is just my star has ungrouped, but my frame is still part of a group. So you can have a group inside of a group, and that nesting can continue. So that's important to distinguish. It is difficult to see if you have an item that is grouped. It's difficult to see whether you're looking at a single group or a group inside of a group. And you can only find that out really when you start ungrouping it. If it remains grouped, it's probably because there was a group inside of that. So that kind of covers how to group and ungroup. Again, you can see an object is grouped by looking at the outline rather than a dashed outline. We're now going to have what I call ants on a log. So it's a ... dash ... that outline, tracer is telling you that this is part of a group. And so anytime you're trying to manipulate things, if you have an imported, file that you're trying to deal with independent elements, or maybe you want to delete part of a design, if you see that ... dash outline, that's telling you it's a group. In order to manipulate these objects, let's say I wanted to delete this star out of this thing, I could see that this is part of a group, and when I clicked on it, it selected all of the items. So I can ungroup that. Now I can see that the star has switched to a single dashed outline, and so now if I unselect things, I can select just the star and move just that. So now that we've covered selecting objects, the different ways we can select things, and we've covered grouping them, let's talk about moving objects, because this is where where we're aiming, right? You've imported a file, you've learned how to ungroup elements. Now you want to deal with some portion of that file. You want to move some stuff around, and there's a couple different ways we can do that. Now, I will, in a future video, I'll get to some of the advanced techniques for aligning things and arranging things, but for now, let's just talk about manually moving things around. So the first and foremost way you can move things is simply by dragging them around. You can use the mouse cursor. You'll see it kind of turns into a four-way arrow. That's telling you that you can move it. So there's a couple different things here. Moving items happens from the middle, right? So the center dot, when you select this item, you're going to get several different dots around it. The center item is going to give you your move arrow, and that's how you move an object. The other dots, like the ones in the center lines of the left and right, and the center lines of the top and bottom, those are for resizing the object. So the top and bottom is going to resize vertically, and the left and right are going to resize horizontally, and then the corners are going to resize in both horizontal and vertical at the same time. Likewise, when it comes to moving things around, you can also rotate them. So if you kind of hover not on the dot in the corner, but just outside of the dot, there's kind of a rotation, a double arrow. If you hover over that, it's going to tell you, it's going to change the cursor to an arrow, a two-directional kind of half circle, quarter circle arrow. That's telling you can rotate. The last items on the menu, which are a little more complicated, are your shears. Are called shear buttons, and this is for kind of manipulating the shape. It's kind of skewing the object, so you have one on the top right and one on the right side that's towards the top, and one on the top that is towards the right. So the one on the top is for shearing left and right, and the one on the right side is for shearing vertically. And if you want to turn these things off, down at the very bottom of LightBurn, along the very bottom edge, there's some check boxes down here in the status bar, and like you can turn off shear. If you never use shear and you just want those buttons to get out of the way, you can turn off the shear checkbox, and that will make those go away. Likewise, if you're working on some manipulations where you just want to move things and you don't want to accidentally change the size, you can turn off the size buttons, and you can turn off the rotate arrows. So this way you can move things around without accidentally changing the size. So that's one way you can move things around. I'm going to go ahead and turn these back on. The other way is using this numeric edits bar. So when you have an object selected, you have this bar kind of at the top. What this shows you, let's get a more regular object here, because I've already kind of manipulated my shape here. What this is showing you is the position on your workspace of this object. Now it's important to note, I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. It's important to note this kind of grid of 9 dots. This is showing you what anchor point these values are in reference to. So right now it's the center, so that's telling me these values and positions are related to the center of this object. If I wanted to say do some alignment manipulations based on the top left corner of this object, I can select the top left alignment dot, so on and so forth. So if you move this around, what you'll see is the positions change, because that's telling you that those positions are based on this alignment anchor. So most of the time you probably want that alignment anchor in the center, but there's times when you're trying to do some manipulation work. Let's say you aligned this object. Let's say we've aligned this object to this rectangle, and we want to do some work. So knowing where the center of this rectangle is relative to the edge of the or knowing where the center of the star is relative to the corner, to the center of the rectangle is not very useful. So in that scenario, I might want to create, use the anchor dot in the top left. Now, one of the things we can do is, let's say we want to move this star 5 millimeters to the right, or 5 millimeters down. We can use this numeric edits box and simply do some math in here. So you can choose to like do the math yourself. So let's say I want to move 5 millimeters to the right. So I could put in here 53 and hit enter, and it's going to move 5 millimeters to the right. But what's neat about these numeric edit boxes is I can actually just do the math in the box. So I can say +5 and hit enter, and it's going to move 5 millimeters to the right. Likewise, if I'm working in metric, I can actually type in numbers in other dimensions. So I say minus 0.25 inches IN. It'll do the math for me and do the conversions to another unit. Likewise, I can use the same kind of math functions here in the width and height box. If I have this anchor, come on, what was not cooperating? If I have this anchor selected, not sure why. So this may be a bug in the release candidate. It appears that when I hover over this, it's always locked. So that's just, I think, a bug in the cosmetic display. Like when you're hovering over this, it's always an anchor. It should actually show whether it's locked or unlocked, because it makes it very confusing. But if you have the anchor, if you have the lock open, you can change the size of this object, but it's only going to change in the one direction. If you have this locked and you change the size, it will change and maintain the aspect ratio of that item. So that kind of covers some of the basics of selecting objects, grouping objects, ungrouping, and how to kind of move things around and manipulate things. I'm sure there's lots of other ways you can do things. There's plenty of different buttons and widgets to push. If you have any comments, let me know in the comment. If you have any ideas, let me know in the comments, or if there's something specific you want me to do a tutorial on, just let me know. Otherwise, smash that like button. It helps me make sure these videos stay on the top of my feed so that I can continue making other great content for you. Make sure to subscribe, and talk to you all later. Thanks, guys.